Hey guys, check out John coming at you with another Diablo Immortal video. All right, so it's been a while since I've talked about the Demon Hunter class. Since we're gonna keep farming and we're gonna go grind it up and try to level up our Demon Hunter and catch up so we can kind of do some testing on builds. I think one thing we gotta stop and do real quick is I think we need to review exactly what skills we should be using as a Demon Hunter, right? I also think it's about time where we go through here and we actually say, okay, well, what new skills did we maybe unlock because of the now new added ability or other like pieces of gear, right, that modify it. So let's go ahead and review that, talk about it. Let's see how you guys feel about the Demon Hunter class as of now versus launch, and we'll just kind of talk about it, have a good old discussion. Stay tuned. All right, guys, so first things first, let's go ahead and let's pull up these skills for the Demon Hunter, and let's just go through them really quickly, kind of get a refresher of what use cases we currently use these skills for, and then we'll take that into consideration when we're talking about the other new added equipment from all the updates since Diablo's launch. So we kind of talk about, okay, were any of these combinations kind of missed and that we didn't really fully understand because maybe the new gear, like you just got set with your build and you never looked at the new gear and really broke it down to see if it's something that you really wanted to change what you're currently running. So with that being said, you may also need to go ahead and change that with these skills that you're utilizing, right? So for example, crossbow shot, most everyone of us use this because you can get basically increased damage on it. You can also get it to where you can shoot through other enemies like in linearly, right? So that way you're piercing basically. But anyways, everyone uses crossbow shot. Why would you use explosive shot or explosive arrow? I can see this being viable if you're doing like a totem build, if you're doing like sentries with explosive arrows and some sort of like exploding thing, right? Mainly because you would already be utilizing a sentry that's going to be utilizing like a blow up effect as well. So you're just kind of go out there and do that. I could see where that could be viable in certain instances, like fast clearing, but most people are going to use crossbow shot. Now, things that we should really talk about that I know gear will change is like escape, right? So let's talk about escape real quick. Jab your blade forward at all enemies in front of you, dealing 9,318 damage, and inflict 80% reduced movement speed for 4 seconds while tumbling backward to escape. Okay, so things to notice is it's a dash forward, dash back, right? So there is that, and it reduces speed. So okay, good to know. So this can be considered like a movement skill, we'll call it, where actually you can see they called it a dash skill, right? Which is basically the same thing as like what is it, daring swing, right? Also a dash skill, so same type of deal. But when we keep moving on here, we also have impale, so rapid throw knives in a direction continually. So this is a charge or channel ability, so it's going to be just a linear attack, right? So anything that modifies that, we need to keep in mind that the original is just the linear attack. Knockback shot, fire bolt of shadow energy, dealing damage and knocks enemies away. So it's like a force control back or push ability. It is a really good one. But we'll keep that in mind if anything modifies it that's extra. I don't think there was anything actually, but it's okay. It is what it is. Okay, next we have this multi-shot here. Fire a salvo of arrows dealing 8,000 damage to all enemies in a direction. It's basically like a big arc, shoots up, blah, blah, blah. This one's very common, especially with the shoulders that allow it to be the burn, because now you get dot damage off of a Demon Hunter, which is amazing. Dot damage in any game is always very, very, very impactful and very helpful. Rain of Vengeance, obviously that's a common one almost everyone's using, with the Valley of Arrows in the air. It's basically just a big circle target where you place it and you go, okay, yep, this is where we're just going to bombard a bunch of arrows to do damage. Very common, very good one. We change it to Stampede, and that way it creates a linear wall or block of damage, so to speak. Sentry, still self-explanatory. Smoke screen, this one has some changes in some of the gear pieces, so I guess let's read this a little bit better. So smoke screen works as create a cloud of thick smoke at your location, concealing you and nearby ally parties for 2.5 seconds. Concealed targets may not be attacked, so basically you're immune to damage for 2.5 seconds with smoke screen. So that's what it does. We'll keep that in mind when there's skills that are, or legendary items that are modifying those, right? Spinning shotgun sound, it's a pretty, you know, it's pretty straightforward. Strafe charge ability again. It slows you down, but you just strafe around, right? And it's all channeling. Still good thing to note and talk about here. Moving on from here, let's go and talk about, okay, the gear next. Mainly because we need to talk about it and figure out what gear pieces will change what the skills that we just talked about, and what that is going to ultimately affect in the long run. All right, so unfortunately my internet did cut out actually right when I was going to switch to this segue, which is going to be actually talking about the new gear that we've gotten so far with Diablo Immortal. The reason why I say this is because for those of you who are not aware, basically all the way down here until I believe Boundless and Inguity was the last original piece of gear here, and we've gained 1, 2, 3, 4 more pieces of gear, or 4 more essences, so to speak, that can manipulate all the other skills that we just went through, right? Why is this important? The reason why we're bringing this up is because it took them a long time to kind of start segueing into these new essences. Even though I know we've all talked about them, we've collaborated, we've like, yeah, this one that's good here, this is the one here. And we talk about this every time we add a piece of gear because it's easy content for us. But the other thing to think is a lot of people are gonna get stuck and they're gonna get just comfortable with their build, right? Then they're gonna be like, well, why would I even invest in something else? What other build would even make sense when this one already works, right? So you kind of build that like semblance of, even though every time we talk about them, you still have that stigma of, okay, yeah, this works for me, I'm gonna stick with it, right? But the point of this that I'm gonna bring up is I wanna kind of just shed some light on some other things that we probably aren't doing right now because we've got that comfortable and that more familiarity, so to speak, and we can still complete content with our, what we think, or what we find to be the best in slot builds. So, okay, so first things first, let's talk about like the helms that we have here. So we have this, what is this? Murdermost, Scattermask, Decoy's Guide, and Abundant Intangibles. These are all different ones that can modify your skills. Start with Murdermost. Basically, that critical hit chance is going up there, but 35 or 3% of your life every second. This is actually terrible. This one right here, I hate Murdermost. It was so cool at first for a minute, and then it's like trying to mitigate that 3% of your life every second is just super hard to do without like converting every single one of your gear pieces, right? So unfortunately that one kind of fell off. Activating Vengeance now immediately deals, so now we have a fear mask, right? Scatter mask, which has become a very big popular fan favorite. We have a increased escape maximum charge by 1. Okay, so let's talk about that. So escape, remember we just reviewed escape and what that did as a skill. So it's a transport forward and then back, right? Situation. Now, is that gonna be like a longer cooldown then? 1 charge? Like that's something to think of, right? So keep that in mind for if there's another skill that maybe modifies escape in a better way, and maybe this will allow you to combine them, right? Then we also have escape now makes you invisible for 2.4 seconds. Okay, interesting. So you can be so when you use it you become invisible as well. Not bad. I guess that's a quick get out free. I don't know if that would really buy you a whole lot of, though, to be honest with you. Maybe for health query bosses for losing aggro quickly or something. I don't know. Moving on to the shoulders here. Let's see. We're gonna now keep in mind as we read through these new additional ones, everything that we just read through in these helms, and kind of see if anything cross references really, really well here. So we have the Daring Swing now fires arrows. No. Escape now launches 3 homing rockets at nearby enemies when activated, each dealing that much damage. Okay, so thing to notice here though. Right now, fan favorite for the Demon Hunter that almost everyone is using is this Rain of Vengeance summons waves of Shadow Beasts that dash forward, right? This is the only modifier for your waves of Shadow. Only one. Or sorry, Rain of Vengeance. It's the only one that does any modifying there. So really, essentially, if you were to say lose this piece of gear, you could pretty much say, okay, well maybe I don't need that skill, so to speak, right? So right now we've got a couple of different things that can go forward. So because now you can get this Escape launches damage, right? So you can use escape to launch damage. Also moving down here to light bait, we keep that up there. Escape now causes you to tumble forward, and can be activated again for a short time to return to your location. So basically you can go movement skill, right? Then you wait a couple seconds, movement skill, go forward. But then if you need to go forward and then back, you can trigger it, right? Like that's how I kind of perceive this, which is something that could be very helpful, because if you come over here and you say, okay, well, now escape has one more charge, well, then now you have more charges than you would if you were using daring swing, or if you're trying to use what essence piece of gear is it that increases the daring swing one? I want to say it's one of the ones that you just would never use, but yeah, there's another one that allows you to have one more charge of daring swing as well, but maybe the cooldown's better, you know. It's that type of a semblance here. So at this point, we've now kind of picked up escape, and we could replace daring swing with it, or because like I was talking about, if you're going to go ahead and remove this stampede, then I would just remove Rain of Vengeance, right, and replace it with that one, and that way that gives you 2 movement speed abilities on your Demon Hunter if you want to just blast. Okay. So what else do we have here? Multi-shot now knocks enemies away. This effect cannot affect players. So multi-shot is another one that everyone uses that says a skill. Knockback arrow was amazing because it basically did a push. Well, now you can change your multi-shot into knockback, which could be very, very helpful, right? So that's something else to keep in mind. Like, okay, so now we have another ability here where like our multi-shot can turn into another one, but then have the damage modifiers of the multi-shot, right? Very, very helpful. Same thing with the shields. I don't think the shield one will ever really be viable, to be honest with you guys. I don't know that tank busters are that important right now in Diablo Immortal. But one other thing to mention here is when we move over to the chest piece, I think almost everybody would agree that they use Vengeance cooldown by 15% mostly. I think a lot of people too have started using the smokescreen, now hurls, and acid bomb. I think that one's been used a lot too, because you can get a high crit and just explode everything, right? But I do want to throw something else too, that if you start looking into these other builds, if you kind of venture away from using Vengeance, or venture away from the idea of having to rely everything around Vengeance. So say, for example, you wanted to use the different chest piece than the one I said is the fan favorite, because you're going to go ahead and use a 1-star gem that you've already max awakened. Like that's what I'm doing, right? Which is why I got my cooldown so low. But I could replace this chest and pick something different here to create a better unity with some other skills with these other pieces of gear here. So when we talk about them, you got Rain of Vengeance can now corrode enemy armor. So basically Rain of Vengeance, if you do keep Rain of Vengeance, you can then modify it differently, but it can do a basically a increased damage taken by 2% for 3 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Like that's a very, very good basically we'll just say it's a defensive down, right? For those of you who are familiar with that type of gameplay with other games, defensive down is how this really works. It's really, really, really helpful, in my opinion, to just do quick clears. So then that could also tie into the fact that you're doing an escape build, which then allows you to clear fast, right? Because then you would be doing a Rain of Vengeance, Rain of Vengeance, Rain of Vengeance, and then it's going to corrode, allow them to take more damage. You throw a dot ability as well on top of this, right? And what do you know? Boom, 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 good to go. And they all die, right? It's just things like that that kind of get to go hand in hand. Now, each time strafe deals damage to an enemy, its damage against that enemy is increased by 3%. Seems like a very quick way to get a more continuous strafe type build, which is similar to like a D3 build. I do think that this was very, very going to be helpful if so you are someone who enjoys using this strafe abilities. The reason why most people don't use strafe abilities is because it's not that 100% continuous, but that's okay, because I'm sure at some point in time Diablo Immortal will make that a thing, just like on D3. Moving on to the breacher, or the pants here, guys. Ruinous Path is probably the most popular as far as Demon Hunters are concerned, because basically everyone's going to be using Vengeance, and the fact that if Vengeance is a passive ability that just inherently increases your primary attack, the fact that you can then increase all your damage you deal by 6% during an active Vengeance timer, which is pretty long, is insane, because then it modifies all your other skills, right, and all your other damage. It's very, very, really helpful. However, some people are using this, like I said, crit hit chances increased by 50% for 1 second after smoke screen concealment ends. Okay, well, yeah, but what if you change your smoke screen, right? but then modifies it into a different way. So say, for example, your smoke screen is mixed with what, the chest? Yeah, the smoke screen now throws a bomb targeting locations, deal continuous damage. Like if you use it with this one, or an acid bomb right here, right? Like, which is probably more like it. Use the acid bond, and then you're guaranteed to crit on that bomb, which is super amount of damage. But then with that being said, you wouldn't really be using vengeance, right? So then you could kind of think, okay, well, what other possibilities are there as far as what you can move on and do? And you also have right here where it's like you literally turn that smoke screen now, it throws a bomb targeting chilling locations instead, all without the guise of really using the vengeance, so to speak. Now, moving on to your primary attack, Strafe also launches homing rockets. This one right here, keep in mind with that, because that's what I'm getting at, is there are some other ones out here that we've talked about continuously that would be helpful with the Strafe type build as well. Or even here, during Strafe, your movement speed is increased by 30%. So once again, if you want to go fast, here you go. I do think it's funny though that like literally out of the updates of new stuff, 1, 2, 3 of them have all been Strafe modifiers. A little odd, in my opinion. But one other thing to talk about is War Generosity. That this one's been slept on for a while. Every 4 attacks with an explosive arrow generates an explosion that knocks the enemy away. So once again, we're talking about explosive arrow. That's when you're going to use like a sentry build type deal, and you can just do a lot of lay turret down and then blow things up. This one's huge because it then turns into a knockback, which then means you don't really need to use knockback, which that means you can switch knockback out for your sentry. It's simple stuff like that, right, as far as the build's concerned. But these type of changes would be something that most people wouldn't be willing to do. Last but not least, we have Strafe duration. Strafe now also litters the ground behind you with caltrops, so it's basically when you run on a straight line, people are going to slide down behind you, they're not going to catch up to you. During Strafe, your movement speed is increased. Sentry launches a rocket every 2 attacks, dealing an additional whatever damage. Okay, so basically Strafe modifiers here. Nothing that really streaks out too much with the other pieces of gear, honestly. Now, here's where this would be good. So Strafe instead throws explosive grenades. Each damages all nearby enemies. So at this point, you could be running like an explosive arrow, totem, Strafe type build. You could be basically doing a bunch of explosion damage all over the place, right? Like you'd be doing a lot of like similar to like AoE, almost AoE, to be honest. So it could allow you to kind of clear things quickly. Now that's combining a lot of the previous pieces of gear that we just talked about. So it's kind of one of those things where what route do you really think is going to be worth it? And why I'm bringing this up is because it's time at this point in the game where it's going to be worth it to just kind of invest more into diversifying what you're doing. So that way you can kind of grow your account a little faster, right? Because right now you're kind of get your semblance of here's your daily routine, yada, yada, yada. This allows you to change that up a little bit and actually re-engage in the game just a little bit more too. But right here, Strafe now fires piercing shots. So even if you don't go with the explosive arrow, then you can do this one here. You're doing piercing shots now with Strafe. You can pair that with crossbow shot, or don't, because you're already gonna have the piercing, you know, something like that. But yeah, that's another really, really good one. And then obviously impaling damage increased by 15% enemies with active harmful effects. That could be kind of useful depending on if, like, you know, what areas you're using it. And then impale allows you to cause enemies to bleed. That is powerful. That one's very, very powerful in my opinion, because literally dot damage so inherently good on any game out there. But that's gonna kind of do it for this video. I think what I'm gonna do is I think I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take I'm gonna randomize some builds here, and we're gonna simulate some possible changes or some possible skill highlights to see what that really does for the character. Leave comments down below if you have some recommended legendary items or gear combinations with skills that you think I should try out as a demon hunter, and kind of record the data to see if it makes sense or if it works. I know a lot of people don't really want to invest the time to figure this out. I could do it. It's worth it for me, for the content. So if it's something that sounds good to you, leave a comment down below and we'll do that. And I also may do like a random generator picker just to see how bad of a build I can make. So all right, that's gonna do it for me. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.